Hi, I'm Dr. Masha, a urologist and men's sexual health expert, and today I'm going to tell you something every man should know, backed by cold, hard stopwatch data from over 500 couples around the globe. You might want to sit down for this, or lie down. I'm not judging. Because we're diving into one of the most common, most whispered about, most misunderstood questions in men's health. How long does sex actually last? And not just what your buddy claims or what you saw in a late-night movie. No exaggeration, no locker room legends. I'm talking real numbers, stopwatch in hand, clinically observed, scientifically analyzed. If you care about your performance, confidence, and long-term sexual health, or you just want to be a better partner, make sure you subscribe and share this video with a friend who might need a little truth in their timeline. Let's start with the big picture, because, oh boy, the picture we've been handed is often painted with pure fiction. In today's hyper-connected world, we're fed some, let's say, enthusiastic ideas about sex. Movies, TikToks, steamy Netflix scenes, and yes, the ever-trustworthy locker room experts. They all contribute to this shiny, unrealistic fantasy of what sex should look like. According to those sources, it's all fireworks, marathon sessions, and impossible acrobatics. But let's get real. Those portrayals can quietly crush a man's confidence. They plant a seed of doubt that grows over time. Am I lasting long enough? Is this normal? Does she think I'm too quick? And that mental chatter? It's one of the biggest saboteurs of sexual confidence. So I'm here, Dr. Masha, in your corner, to clear the fog with real science, real data, and a healthy dose of truth. Let's pull back the curtain. Let's talk about the study. This isn't just hearsay from a Reddit thread. In a well-structured multi-country study, researchers did something bold. They handed out stopwatches to over 500 couples and asked them to time their sexual encounters. Yes, really. That's some serious dedication to science. Imagine setting the mood with, "Wait, babe, let me start the stopwatch." Romance. But the data they gathered is gold. Before we look at the results, we need to clarify how they define sex. For the sake of this study, they measured something called intravaginal ejaculation latency time. IELT for short. Sounds fancy, right? Don't worry, I'll break it down. IELT is simply the amount of time that passes from penetration to ejaculation. That's it. It doesn't count foreplay, kissing, oral sex, cuddling, pillow talk, or that moment you try to impress your partner by doing a push-up afterwards. Strictly penetration to climax. Now, quick side note. Just because the study focuses on this narrow definition doesn't mean that's what sex should mean to you or your partner. Sex is about intimacy, connection, pleasure. It's a whole symphony, not just one instrument. But for research purposes, we need a consistent way to measure things. So, penetration to ejaculation it is. And here's where it gets really interesting. What do men think is normal? According to surveys, when men are asked what they believe is the ideal duration of intercourse, the answer is surprisingly consistent. Most guys say the ideal is about 16 minutes. Sounds reasonable, right? And when asked how long they think the average guy lasts, they'll guess around 9 minutes. But wait for it, because the truth might surprise you, or relieve you, or both. Coming up in part 2, the real numbers and the unexpected country winner, we'll dive into what the stopwatch data actually shows, including the average time men last, the extreme ranges, and which country has the highest number on the charts. Let's just say, if you've been sweating bullets over not being a marathon man, you might just relax a bit after hearing the truth. The real numbers and eye-openers, ow, it's time for the moment of truth. So, drum roll, please. In this global study involving over 500 couples, researchers found that the average length of penetrative intercourse, again, from the moment of entry to the moment of ejaculation, was just 5.7 minutes. That's right, under 6 minutes. That's not a typo. That's not a rounding error. That's real-world stopwatch data. Now, before you start wondering if you've been doing it wrong your whole life, relax. In fact, if you're anywhere around that number, you're doing just fine. Statistically speaking, you're well within the range of normal. The anxiety many men feel about not lasting long enough, it's not based on reality, it's based on fantasy. Hollywood, social media, adult films, they all set expectations that are about as realistic as thinking you'll win an Oscar for brushing your teeth. Let's look at the range. Now, while the average was 5.7 minutes, the full range was pretty wide. Some men lasted just 0.1 minutes, that's 6 seconds, while others went the distance with up to 55 minutes of penetration. That's a serious workout. I hope he's stretched. But remember, outliers exist in every dataset. There will always be those on either extreme. What matters most is the average, and more importantly, how satisfied both partners are, not whether you can beat a stopwatch. Global breakdown. Which country lasted longest? Here's where things get really spicy. This study didn't just measure time, it compared it across nations. So how did different countries stack up? Turkey had the shortest average IELT at 4.4 minutes. The United Kingdom came in with the highest average at nearly 10 minutes, a surprise twist that had researchers sipping tea and taking notes. Other countries fell somewhere in between, with averages in the 5 to 7 minute range. So yes, if you've ever looked at your watch mid-romp and thought, wait, already? You're not alone. In fact, you're right in the middle of the global bell curve. So, what's going on here? Why do we have such a massive difference between what men believe is happening in bedrooms and what's actually happening? Well, it boils down to expectation inflation. The cultural narrative around sex, especially for men, puts duration on a pedestal. The longer, the better. The shorter, the shame. But the truth is, duration doesn't equal satisfaction. Not for you, not for your partner. There's no trophy for running a 45-minute sexual marathon if neither of you is enjoying it. In fact, research shows that focusing too much on performance, especially time, can create anxiety that makes everything worse. Yes, worrying about finishing too fast can actually make you finish faster. The brain is powerful like that, and occasionally rude. What women really want, it's not what you think. All right, you've made it through the stopwatch science. You now know the real average duration of penetrative sex is 5.7 minutes. You've also seen that what most men believe is normal or ideal is based on, let's just say, some very creative fiction. So now let's flip the lens. We've talked about men, but what about women? What do women actually want when it comes to sex, specifically how long it lasts? Here's where things get a little fuzzy, because unlike the stopwatch study on men's performance, we don't have a ton of rigorous clinical data on women's ideal timing. But we do have something incredibly useful: a large-scale online survey of over 4,000 women. And when asked, how long would you ideally want intercourse to last? The average response was 25 minutes of penetrative sex. Yes, you heard that right. That's more than 4 times the actual average. But before you panic and start carb loading for your next bedroom session, let's unpack that number, why the gap, and why it's okay. First, keep in mind, the survey asked women for an ideal scenario, not what's necessary for satisfaction every time. That's an important distinction, because just like men, women's expectations are also influenced by media, culture, and personal fantasy. Also, here's a secret that'll change how you think about sex forever. Penetration isn't the only thing that matters, not even close. In fact, many women report that foreplay, emotional connection, communication, and variety are just as important, if not more, than the number of minutes of thrusting. So while 25 minutes might be the fantasy number floating around in surveys, most women aren't clocking you like Olympic judges. They're not counting the seconds, they're feeling the moment. And guess what? Satisfaction doesn't come from duration, it comes from connection. Focus on satisfaction, not seconds. Instead of stressing over how long you last, ask yourself this: did we feel close? Was there mutual pleasure? Did we laugh, enjoy, connect? Did we communicate during or afterward? These are the moments that actually make sex fulfilling. And here's the good news: when both partners feel safe, understood, and satisfied, performance anxiety tends to melt away. When you stop chasing numbers, you can actually start enjoying intimacy for what it's supposed to be: connection, pleasure, and trust. But what if there are real struggles? Now, all of this is not to say that performance issues don't matter. If you or your partner are dealing with challenges like premature ejaculation, erectile dysfunction, difficulty reaching climax, or anxiety that keeps interrupting the experience, you're not alone. These are very common, very real concerns. But the great news is, they're also very treatable. Here's what I recommend. Step 1. Talk to a board-certified urologist, someone like me, Dr. Masha. We can help determine whether your concern is physical, psychological, or a mix of both. From hormones to circulation to nervous system function, there are many possible root causes and many ways to treat them. Step 2. Consider working with a certified sex therapist, especially if anxiety, shame, or relationship stress is part of the picture. Sometimes the biggest block isn't in your body, it's in your head. And there's no shame in that. Therapy works. In fact, I've added a link below this video to help you find a licensed sex therapist near you. They're trained professionals who can help you rediscover confidence and connection no matter what's going on.